Hello, book lovers, and welcome to the 134th episode of Authors Love Bookstores from a Mighty Blaze. I'm your host, Joe Moldover, and I am delighted to be back here with you today. Every week, me and my partner, Kimberly Hensel Lawrence, crisscross North America visiting independent bookstores and the authors who love them. And today, we are delighted to be in San Diego, California with Mysterious Galaxy. We are joined by Sarina Dahlan, author, and Nick Eske, director of events at Mysterious Galaxy. Sarina and Nick, welcome to both of you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for
Yes,
having me
thank you for
here.
having us.
We're happy to have you. For those who don't know, Sarina Dahlan was born into an Indonesian family in Thailand and immigrated to the United States at the age of 12. While children in the West grew up on fairy tales, she learned parables through ghost stories, mythologies, and Japanese manga. She is the author of the short story collection Shadow Play, 10 Tales from the In-Between, and her debut novel, Reset, came out in May 2021. Her second book, the prequel Preset, launched yesterday.
Oops, wrong
They're
side.
beautiful, nice. Well, we've got a professional bookseller online. Kim Stanley Robinson, a Hugo Award winning novelist, says that in Preset, a collision of our era's catastrophes fuses a new world, becoming something rich and strange. Sarina, congratulations on
Thank
the new book.
you.
Congratulations on Kim Stanley Robinson saying that, which is pretty
I
awesome.
know.
Um,
It's
so,
really awesome.
so I mean, lots of questions for both of you today, and welcome to the audience. Please feel free to drop questions and comments in the chat. Sarina, I'm going to go to you first. On Authors Love Bookstores, as you know, we love to visit authors with their favorite indie. You selected Mysterious Galaxy as yours, and I would love it if you would tell us what is so special about this bookstore.
Well, Mysterious Galaxy has been one of my favorites since forever. And and when you go into the store, you just get this feeling that you are, I don't know, it's like I just love bookstores so much, but Mysterious Galaxy, when you walk into it, you just feel kind of like almost like you're home in a way. There's,
Aw.
yeah, it's like someone's always greeting you and asking you whether or not you're finding everything, okay. Everything is really easy to find. And they've been such great support of me as an author as well with my first book and also now with the second. And one little thing that will keep them in my heart forever. One time I took my daughters to go shopping for their birthday because they love to read. And when I asked them what do they want for their birthday, they said books. I took them in there. And then everyone was just like greeting me really well. But what really cinched the deal was like, I think it was Nick. And he offered me an author discount. And the kids were like, you got a discount? And then, yeah, they like, they were so in awe by the fact that I was offered a discount at a bookstore because they're just like, how did you do that? Like,
Oh
you
my
just have to write
gosh.
a couple books.
I love that. My local indie bookstore had a local author discount, and they abolished it right after I published my first novel. And I was
Oh.
so mad. I was like, that's like half the reason I wrote a novel was I wanted to like go into the bookstore and be like, hey, local author, I'll take my like 10% off. But
Why spend half of like my bookstore budget like at Mysterious Galaxy? So I'm kind
right.
of like, this
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it.
is great.
Nick, tell us a little bit about Mysterious Galaxy. So, we have visited well over 100 independent bookstores over the last 3 years, all over North America, UK, Canada. Um, we have definitely visited bookstores that have specializations, mystery bookstores, romance bookstores, things like that. Mysterious Galaxy just sort of seems to be a little bit unique in the way that you kind of define yourself, I think, as a sort of like a genre bookstore. Can you just like tell us a little bit about the store and sort of like what your mission and your sort of niche is?
Absolutely. So back in 1992, the original founders of Mysterious Galaxy saw that there was definitely something lacking in San Diego, and that being genre bookstores. There may have been bookstores that had mystery, bookstores that had like two rows of sci-fi and fantasy put together, and they were like, "What we need something that us who love all these different genres can go to and find a great selection. Because true, you may find some of the big names on many shelves in just regular bookstores that don't specialize, but what about the smaller authors that are debuting? What about the authors that have kind of a smaller following throughout the years? So that's when our original founders finally pushed it through, and in 1993, 30 years ago, founded Mysterious Galaxy. We just celebrated our 30th birthday, and we're so thankful that the San Diego has just embraced us and helped us, especially in the last 3 years. If it weren't for such wonderful customers and authors like Sarina here, like recommending people to us, and just people keeping us alive, I would not be here. The store would not be here, and we wouldn't have seen our 30th birthday this year.
Oh, that's great. That's fabulous. So we have some fans in the audience. Trisha, thank you for your comment. Sarina, for people who are not familiar, I do just want to talk to you a little bit about reset and preset. Can you give us like a double elevator pitch? Can you give us like, we'll ride down in the elevator, then up in the elevator, or something like that. But it's like, can you just like tell us a little bit about this story world in these books? And a reminder for the audience, we're going to be putting links in the chat for you to pick up copies, signed copies if you so desire, from Mysterious Galaxy. So if what you hear sounds good, click these links and pick up your copies. But
I'm going to interject. Sarina has offered. What did you offer to do as well as signing?
I offered to draw my senior cat, who is 20 years old this year, and I've been I've been like every day. I'm like, are you still alive?
No.
It's a fair question.
He's healthy. He's amazing. He's my muse. So this is one way for me to kind of have him live on in copies of Preset. That's ordered through Mysterious Galaxy.
Oh my gosh. I mean, look, like you cannot get original cat art through like online book retailers and big box stores. So, I mean, yeah, like people know what to do. Go click the link. But yeah, Sarina, give us the pitch. Tell us what these books are all about.
So Preset and Reset is set. They're both set in this futuristic world where memories are erased in the name of peace. Reset centers around these two characters who live in this world. It's 200 years in the future, and they are past lovers who one doesn't remember the other person, whereas the other person remembers. And it's a story of them trying to come together in this kind of world where how do you get back to love when your memories are considered a threat. And Preset is a prequel to that. However, I wrote it as standalone. All of my books are standalone. So even though they're a part of the same series, which I call the Four Cities series, they can be read at any order. And they just kind of each give you an idea of how the stories that's set in this world. Preset tells a story of the creators of this world, and they are Eli and Eleanor, and they're survivors of the last war, and they're married. And I wanted to tell a story of how surviving near human extinction, what does that do to relationship? What does that do, especially when you come at the how to save humanity conundrum from opposite ends?
That's great. Trisha has a question for you, which actually immediately anticipates what I was like about to ask you. But Trisha is wondering, why a prequel? Why did you decide to go back in time rather than ahead in time for book 2 of this in this world?
Yeah, so in Reset, I had left in one of the last chapters, and I'm not spoiling anything, so don't worry. But in one of the last chapters, I wrote a conversation between the creators and how they kind of saw this world and how to save humanity from one end, which is to erase memories, because memories is a seed of hatred, the seed of prejudice and racism. And the other side is like, no, you have to give people choice. So it becomes this kind of conversation around choice and freedom versus peace and control. And in preset, I wanted to expand on that and try to kind of untangle this idea and thought about, because it is such, when you look at it, it addresses so many issues that we have in our own society. And I wanted to kind of explore it from a very intimate perspective of two people who actually love each other, because I think it's easier to write conflict when it's, from the perspective of two people who don't like each other. But what about the perspective of from the point of view of two people who love each other, want to support each other, but just cannot get behind each other's belief system?
Yeah, that's great. Nick, so book selling question for you about this, kind of on the selling side, and sort of just or speaking a little bit more broadly about fiction that has a dystopian quality, or sort of has dystopian edge or aspect to it. We're living in sort of mildly dystopian times. We've had a pandemic. There's stuff with climate change, AI. There's a lot going on. What is your sense? I mean, do people have more of an appetite for dystopia in times like these? Do people kind of like want to explore what happens after a massive war, or what happens after a pandemic, or what happens after totalitarian government takes over, or after climate change moves ahead? Or do people not want to do that? Do people feel like they're living it and like, no thanks, that's not what I want to do in my reading life?
Great question. I definitely think there are two camps when big things happen in the world. There are people who will want to, I need to read more about this. I need to be well informed. There are some people who are like, I need good things. I need to get away from the sadness. Definitely during the early years of the pandemic, we did see quite a shift of people wanting to not read depressing things. So we saw actually, it was both ways. We had people who wanted more what's called cozy reads, reads that make them feel good with very optimistic endings. But then we also had a sharp increase in people wanting horror. Like, they needed something that wasn't close to our current horror. So they needed to go to the extreme of, oh, this is supernatural, can't really happen horror, just so they didn't feel like they were in our current horror. Right now, we have seen, I think, people returning to the genre dystopia, but definitely in the early years of the pandemic, it was like too close to home, especially if it was anything related to a pandemic, to a virus. People like, nope, I need something different than that because I'm dealing with a bit too much of that. But what I really like about Preset, which, thank you, Sarina, I did read. Thank you for giving that advanced copy, by the way. What really stuck out to me about this book is there is no like real bad person. There's no like villain that we can like say, oh yeah, that's the bad guy, we should be all against him. Because I think on each side, without spoiling too much, we can really empathize. We can really see, I understand from their point of view. I can see where you're coming from. The resistance people, I can see where you're going and why you wanting this. So you really create such a hard line of like, who do you root for? Do you really root for any one of them? Do you root for all of them? So you kept me really guessing through the entire book, like, who do I really want to side with? So thank you for that.
Hearing that. Oh, I love hearing that. Thank you so much.
Sarina, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your sort of origin story on some of these things, on this type of writing. I just have a couple of questions about that for you. And I think, first of all, I just think that one thing that we love to dig into on this show when we can is sort of this idea of genre and the distinctions between different genres and the blurring of genres. What does it mean to write a genre? I think that for some authors who write in a genre, they just kind of wind up there a little bit accidentally. So, I mean, I write young adult fiction. I just signed a deal for my second young adult novel, and I did not know I was writing young adults until I got an agent who, for my first book, who was like, "Oh yeah, we're going to sell this as a young adult novel," and I was like, "Okay, I guess that's what it is." I was just writing what I wanted to write, and you tell
Mhm.
me what shelf it goes on. Other people, I think, are very, very committed to being, science fiction or to being fantasy or to being whatever. What was it for you? Was this always the space you wanted to be in, or were you just sort of writing from the heart and it wound up on this shelf?
That's so fascinating because Nick asked this question actually at the a panel that he held at Mysterious Galaxy 30th anniversary, and it was specifically on genres. And my answer was I actually got into it very much like you, Joe, by accident. I wanted to just write a relationship story. I wanted to write and explore the idea of what kind of world what kind of people would live in a world where memories are erased in the name of peace? What would it be like to live there? Um, how would that affect you as a person? What like why essentially, and the main reason is why. And as I was exploring that, because this can't happen today, it has to happen in the future. And somehow, like I ended up with this story that I thought was, in general, a speculative fiction.
Hmm.
But when it got into the hands of my agent, she fell in love first with actually the romantic aspect of the relationship of the
Yeah,
two people in the world. And because of that, when we went into, um, you know, submission to publishers, it was essentially put in, science fiction because it's set in the future, and romance because it's a relationship story between two people.
right.
Um, and I think genre is very interesting, like genre. I don't think authors, I don't know. I mean, to say none would be a general statement, but I feel like most of the time authors go into a story because it's something that we feel like we have to write.
Hmm.
And we don't think necessarily about the marketing aspect of it until someone tells us to do it.
Right.
Because when you think of it, writing takes forever. It takes a year. And you are writing, and you're not just writing it once. You write it and then you edit it and you rewrite it. And then by the time it is ready to go into publishing, you may have written this story 5, 6, 10 times. And so it becomes less of like a black and white, clear way of saying my story is this. It is a journey for the writers. So it's actually, like it takes someone who comes in from the other end to say, okay, no, I think it fits here because when you go into a bookstore, there are specific shelves for specific books, and and you have to think of like what the reader's experience. They go into the bookstore, they might only have 10 minutes, they might only have 15. They go in and they're like, okay, I'm looking for a book that's kind of like this, or I like this author. And it becomes this kind of like an easy way or an easier way to go to that specific shelf, a specific section, and go, well, if I like this author, I might like that, or if I like this type of story, I might like that.
Mm. I think it's so interesting, and I don't think it's the way that most readers think that it works. I think most readers sort of think like, "Oh, I'm gonna write like a mystery, or I'm gonna write like a science fiction novel, kind of like I'm gonna like, have a Coke or I'm gonna have a Pepsi." And but I think what you're describing is exactly right. And then there is this kind of what I found to be a little bit of an uncomfortable process of kind of taking the creative piece of this and kind of marrying it to the market. And I wonder, I mean, have you ever found genre conventions or classification or marketing to be limiting for you? Is it something that you chafe at?
Well, I don't know if I chafe at it, but it is a mystery to me in certain ways. For example, my book being talked of as a romance, I feel it's not necessarily um, a full-on picture of what the book is, because it doesn't really follow the romance trope. It
Yeah.
doesn't really follow the necessity of the happily ever after trope. And so it can be kind of, I feel, limiting to certain stories, but I feel like it I'm not sure, because at the same time, I have readers who come to me and say, I don't usually read sci-fi, but I love your story.
Hmm.
Or I don't usually read romantic story, but I love your story.
Hmm.
So it's almost like sometimes you kind of have to just get in and readjust later. And sometimes readers will readjust because they have had their expectations set previously, because history, right? I mean, I follow a certain history of what science fiction writers or what science fiction stories look like. And if my story doesn't exactly fit there, and someone, because of that, someone doesn't normally, let's say someone doesn't normally read science fiction, but they come across my book somehow, it might change their mind about science fiction. So I think there's definitely room to explore for both writers and readers when we don't kind of box ourselves into certain genre, because I feel like, especially now, there's so many interesting things being done in genres. There's mixing of genres. There's kind of like using this and using that. And some books are just, they just don't fit in a specific genre. So yeah, so I feel like there's definitely room to explore on both sides.
Yeah. I mean, Nick, what is from the book selling side? What is your take? I mean, how much flexibility do you are people coming into the store, so genre bookstore? Are people coming in saying like, look, this is what I like. Just give me another hit of this, of like of what I want, of like fantasy. And if it doesn't hit the tropes of this genre, like I'm not going to be happy. Or are people sort of crossing genre lines? Are they open to different things? Like how much fluidity is there in kind of like your reading um base?
We definitely get both camps.
Okay.
We every day we'll get someone comes in like, I like reading this particular author or this particular like series. I want more of this. I just think there's readers who they know what they like, and they, especially with money the way things is, they want to spend their dollars towards something that they know they'll continue to enjoy. But I think one of the best things about reading is, to open yourself up to other ideas. And if you don't like it, you don't have to finish the book. And I think that's one of the best things about working at an independent bookstore, and also going to independent bookstores, is you get to talk to booksellers like us who can recommend books to you that, like, well, you mentioned this kind of element or this author, it has these elements in it, but it also has more, or it may have something that you may enjoy. And we love to do that. We love to give more to readers that we hope that they'll like. And if they end up not liking it, it happens. But more often than not, we have people that are like, I am so thankful for what you recommended to me. I did like it, or my family member liked it, my kid liked it. It makes them, they want to read more of that author now, or they want to like look more into this kind of particular genre. And there, yeah, I agree with Sarina. There's definitely, especially these days, more books that are hard to categorize. And I understand from a publisher standpoint, they need those categories, because how else are they going to sell this book?
Hmm.
But for example, we have The Devil Takes You Home by, oh my goodness. That's the bad part. There's so many books and so many authors, sometimes the name just escapes.
Yeah,
But
Kimberly will
Happens
drop it
to
in the
me
chat.
all the time.
Yeah, we'll put it in the chat.
but Gambino Iglesias, thank you, Gambino Iglesias, The Devil Takes You Home. It's a horror / thriller, and there are elements in both that, oh, you think that maybe this is just a psychological thriller. No, there's actually actual horror, supernatural elements to it, in the entire way. And there's these wonderful books that have these elements that are just totally meshing, and you can't put it in one or the other camp. They have to somehow be in the line between. And we're definitely seeing more of those kind of books slowly coming out these days. And I think that's just the willingness of publishers to like kind of cross those lines and take risks. And I enjoy those risks.
Yeah, like recently I read Rika Aogi's book. And her book is a perfect mesh between science fiction and fantasy. And also you throw in kind of like this YA, like growing up and self-discovery. And I fell in love with the book right away because it's so fresh and new. And from the perspective of me as an author, brave. So yeah.
Tell us again, Sarina, tell us again the title of that book.
The title is Light from Uncommon Stars by
Light.
Rika Aoki.
Fabulous.
Aoki.
For the audience, the links are popping up below the picture. Pick up that book, pick up The Devil Takes You Home from a Mysterious Galaxy. Pick up Reset and Preset and get autographs and cat art. Click the link, do your thing. There it is. Nick, I mean, I don't know if this is kind of a silly question. This might be sort of along the lines of, the famous quote about pornography that, like, you can't define it, but you know it when you see it. But like,
Okay.
like what is, you're a genre bookstore. So like when a book comes in that is just like not genre, that's not genre fiction, you would not carry it. That, is not sort of appropriate for your store. I mean, what makes something genre versus not genre? I mean, I sort of feel like I can generate obviously lots of names of authors who are not genre, and whether it's classics or whether it's people who are very kind of self-consciously literary, like a new Anne Patchett novel or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, but I don't know, like what makes something genre?
Which was another question we had at our 30th birthday bash, Sarina. I don't know. I don't think you were part of that panel. It was one of the beginning, or was it that panel? Yeah, I think that was that panel that you were on. They're coming back at me. That's crazy. I think the biggest thing to take away from genres is that they're stories that have all these elements of just they're real world, but they're not real world. Like we have mystery, we have thriller, we have sci-fi, we have fantasy, everything that I think is elements of our real world, but we're just magnifying them and making whole stories around them. To me, non-genre would be kind of like War and Peace, something that is actual, like is historically of our time, just outside of fiction, a few details away, but speculative. I think one of the biggest things that we can hang on there is the idea of speculative fiction, where it's definitely more of the fictional side, but still, even if it's fantasy or horror, you can still envision yourself in the story. And that's one of the best things that I like about genre fiction, is even with all these fantastical elements that I hope they won't happen in this world, but it'd be a fun thing to think of myself in the story and live in the day, or however long it takes you to read the book. I don't know. It could be a big book. Of that character or the characters.
Yeah. For me, I think I've always read genres. And to me, it's kind of like a way for me to take a big idea and consume it in small bites. And you can do it in various different ways. Sometimes you have this big idea or whatever that's happening in the world, and you want to see it from various different angles. And sometimes you want to read it in a thriller form because you want your heart to kind of race as you are trying to like get to the core truth. Sometimes you want to fall in love, so you look for a romantic leaning or love story that addresses that issue. And sometimes you want something that's completely out of this world, like a space opera, that also addresses that issue, but you can escape. And so they're all kind of a way to put it a little bit at arm's length, but also allow you to enjoy it, but think about it and address it in some way, but in ways that's just not so in your face.
Yeah, I think that's great. And Matthew's commenting over on YouTube that beyond genres, that you fall squarely in quote literature due to the universality of your characters. Thanks, Matthew. That's wonderful. Serena, I had sort of a question. I had a specific question for you about the about playing with memory. Because I think that's a very interesting quality of the story world you've created, and I think you know, I mean, I think forever authors have sort of used memory and things like amnesia and stuff like that as a story trope. You
Mhm.
know, I just made my kids watch Memento, which they consider to be like a old classic movie. But
Ouch.
yeah, I know, right? Yeah, exactly. I know it hurts. Um, but you know, but I also think that there's new science um, where I think scientists are actually getting close to being able to manipulate memories,
Mhm.
treatments for things like post-traumatic stress disorder that are trying to actually excise traumatic memories as a treatment um, for PTSD. I think there's some very interesting newer fiction. The Blinds by Adam Sternberg, I thought was sort of a wonderful new speculative mystery that sort of hinged on that. It's a fabulous book. Um, so I wonder, it's sort of a two-part question. I think first of all, why are people? What do you think it is about memory and memory manipulation that's just sort of such a juicy hook for writers? And then secondly, were you interested in some of this new neuroscience research in developing your world?
Absolutely. I did a ton of research, and I'd still be doing research if I didn't have a deadline. It's extremely fascinating to me because I think for humans, the idea of not just memory, because I think that animals do remember. However, what's unique about humans is that we can record our memory, and we can record it and share it via stories. And when you think about how unique that is, you begin to think about how, like, I'm able to read a Rumi's poem that's written a long time ago. And that sense of being able to transfer memory from one generation to the next generation to the next generation sounds to me kind of like magic. And there's so much, and I feel like because it's so fascinating, there's like all these new studies that's popping up all the time around memories. Like, how do we remember? What happens when we can't remember? What happens to other people who are dealing with loved ones who cannot remember them? There are so many fascinating new things that are being studied in neuroscience, in which I definitely did a lot of reading up on in order to write both Reset and Preset. Um, it's wonderful you mentioned the idea of the drug that's treating PTSD, because that's actually also in the book. The idea that there is a drug because the last war happened and a whole group of people are now suffering from the PTSD of having survived. So they had to create this drug that made people forget, and
Mm,
how that drug eventually became, like this bigger kind of movement towards tabula rasa, where every 4 years the citizens of this world get their memories erased so that they can start anew and have and rebuild memories. And so, yeah, so it's so many things fascinating in that, because I don't think we understand it enough, that it will always be a mystery.
it's so fascinating. It's so fascinating, and the tabula rasa concept is so fascinating. And yeah, I mean, in my day job, I used to work with people with traumatic brain injuries who had memory loss and things like that. And I think one of the fascinating things was the link between memory and identity. And are you
Mhm.
still the person that you were if you can't remember things and you can have a relationship with somebody if you no longer share memories? And that's exactly what you're grappling with. So it's fascinating. It's really fascinating. It's fabulous. That's
Yeah,
great.
I can do research on this forever.
Yeah, yeah. I can do a second career in neuroscience. Absolutely. Um, well, it is the part of the show that I love where we need to get to work selling some books. So, to the audience, we're going to offer some book recommendations here. We are going to be dropping the links in the chat for you to pick up copies of anything and everything that we mention over at Mysterious Galaxy, obviously including Reset and Preset. I've already done my part. I mentioned that I thought The Blinds was a fabulous book, and people can head over there. Nick, you're the professional. Would you tell us maybe some books right now that you're feeling excited about or that are really hot at Mysterious Galaxy?
Sure. To go back to what you were just talking about with memories, I first want to share one of my favorite books that I read that I really like that deals with memories, but it's also time traveling by reliving your memories. That's Blake's Crouch Recursion. So if you want something that's unique about time travel, where I've never seen it before until this one, Recursion by Blake Crouch. Right now, I really enjoyed Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers. That one was a fun read. Basically, the way I can describe it is a murder mystery, kind of Hallmark style. A Chinese woman in her 60s lives in San Fran, has a failing tea business. Dead body happens to be on her floor. Of course, she has all the time in the world, so she thinks she can do a better job about solving the murder than the police. So she tries to do it. It is so wonderful, and I listened to the audiobook, and the narrator is obviously someone who also is Chinese. They got all the pronunciation of, by the way, great food references in it too. Mwah. They got all the pronunciations correct, and I want more of Vera Wong. And last I heard, Oprah was optioning it to be like a series. So I would love to see also a TV series for this or something, or a Netflix
Oh,
series.
I love that.
Yeah. And for a fantasy title, I really enjoyed recently by Daniel F. Ford, The Warden. If you like magic schools, I won't mention certain titles, but if you want magic schools, you love Dungeons and Dragons, and you like the Wild Wild West, this is something for you. It takes the main character, who is a woman, my goodness, the top in her class, how dare she, and also a chosen necromancer. By the time she gets posted for her job position after graduating with top marks, she gets the most loneliest, unheard of place ever as her reward. But darn tootin', she's going to be the best warden that this small town has ever seen. So she'll keep the peace with her necromantic magic.
Oh, that's
Oh my,
so
great.
fun.
Holy cow. You do that. I can tell you do this for a living. That's a great pitch. That's fabulous.
I enjoyed the book, so I am willing to talk to it about whoever.
That's
whoever.
awesome. Love it. Sarina, what about you? What are you feeling excited about?
Oh my gosh. I am feeling excited about so many. I have a stack of TBRs this thick. So I am kind of like going through it, but my trouble right now is that I'm on deadline for book 3. So I'm not going to be able to read any of the books that's on my TBR list until I turn this in. So yeah, so let's say like the last book I read was, Rika Aogi's book. I love that book. I tell everyone to read it. I think it's an important book, so please go read it. Kim Stanley Robinson's book. I know this came out a couple of years back, the one on the Ministry for the Future. I think it's a really important book to read around climate change. But what I love about his book is that there's this kind of utopian idea about how people can actually come together and solve some climate issue problems. I have a lot of friends who's written books. So like if you look on the back of my shelf, a lot of those authors I know. One of which is Trisha. She has her 2 books out already. So congratulations to Trisha. So definitely read her books. Gosh, so many more. I'm missing some really, really important ones. So gosh, let's see.
Isn't it
think
tough
I'll
when you're
stop.
always put on the spot
I
for
know
books?
it's horrible.
Yeah,
It's horrible
I
when you
know.
put on the
I
spot.
have so many that's on my TBR list, and so many that I just cannot wait to get to as soon as I turn in my books. So
Well, we're dropping all those links into the chat, including Trisha Blanchett's Herrick's End, Herrick's Lie, from her fabulous YA fantasy series. Um, Guys, we're running low on time. It's so delightful to talk to both of you. I've got one last question for each of you. And Sarina, you've partially answered the one for you, which is what's coming up next. It sounds like book 3. Is there anything that you are able and willing to tell us?
it is going to be a sequel to the first book, which is Reset, and it is gonna happen. It happens 2 cycles, which is like a full cycle, 4 years, and it's so 4 years after the first book, and there will maybe not have a lot of the old characters.
Okay.
And a lot of new characters. It is going to be set mostly at the Center for Discovery and Learning, which is where all the created children are born and raised. And yeah, it's going to be a big cast. It's going to address some questions about, how memories are kept or not, to be seen.
Oh, sounds great. Very nice teaser. That sounds great. It sounds fabulous. Do we know when we're going to see it?
May of next year
Yeah,
is
next year.
the plan.
Okay, man,
Yeah.
unbelievable. Nick, the very, very last question of the show traditionally goes to the bookseller. Episode 134, we've asked this question to booksellers all across everywhere, and it is a fill in the blank, and it goes like this. Success as an independent bookseller is part luck, part hard work, and part what else? And your mic is off, so there you go.
Huh. That's a good one. Part luck, part success.
Part luck, part hard work, and part what to be successful?
Okay. Oh my goodness. Part what's in stock. Part being well read.
Yeah. I think that no one's actually said that, I don't think, but I think it's absolutely true. Because I mean, so much of it is being able to have these conversations, like the one you were just demonstrating, where you're just able to kind of give this in-depth take on these different books and make the connections to other books.
Yeah, there's so, and like Sarina's TBR pile, my TBR pile is also pretty big, both with books that just came out. And one of the cool things about doing what we do, we also get advanced copies. So, and there's like a whole bunch of titles. Like, I'm excited to read this. Eventually, hopefully, I'll read it before the publishing date. But yeah, so many good things coming out this year too. It's not fair. It's not fair. It should be like the Twilight Zone episode where the world ends, so we have all the time in the world. I don't have glasses, so I don't have to worry about that. Deep cut for everyone who's seen that episode.
Yes, all of us with forthcoming books agree that it's not fair that the field is so crowded. We totally agree. It's such a pleasure to speak to the two of you. Thank you both so much for speaking to me, to the audience. Thank you for joining us. Just one more time, click the links, which are now copious in the chat. Those of you with us now, those of us watching this in future time, head to Mysterious Galaxy Online, pick up Sarina's Reset and Preset, get them signed with original cat art drawn in. Thank you. And come on back. We are back in 2 weeks with Catherine Ray. We are back in 3 weeks with our summer reading YA panel with the previously mentioned Trisha Blanchett, who we always love, appearing alongside the authors Kip Wilson and Jen DeLeon. It's going to be a great conversation. We hope you'll join us. Sarina Dahlan, author of Preset, Reset. And Nick, thank you for coming in from Mysterious Galaxy. It's a complete pleasure to speak to the two of you. Thank you both so much for being here today.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. To the audience, thank you. Be well. Keep reading.
Thank you.